We decided to begin the podcast today, What's Good Under the Hood, with a little bit of a song. You ready?
We're not doing that one.
As the Partridge Family once sang, what are we going to do?
Come on,
get happy. That's all we know from that song. That's freaking sad.
That's all we need to know.
You know what else we know about the Partridge Family? Song. You know what else we know about the Partridge Family?
What?
They drove a gasoline-powered psychedelic hippie bus. They did. Remember that?
There was some weed smoking going on in that
Kenny
thing.
Chesney, a country star, had a Partridge Family bus one year on tour. He painted it up, and it was hippie style. They were smoking marijuana on that bus, too, I bet you.
Man, we don't need to be talking about that.
You
We got
betcha.
other things to go with, my friend.
It's criminal.
Okay, let's
So
do
let's
it.
talk about what's good under the hood. As you see on screen with me, my name is Andy Rob Sanders of Fox Sports Radio 1400 AM WCOS. Is with us today. Rob, welcome to the show.
Who else is with you?
And the man,
What's it say right there on the screen?
it says super handsome guy.
Are you patting yourself on the back today, Greg? We can't allow that.
Listen, you guys are over messing around with all this audio equipment. You give me some spare time to go in and type some stuff in the screen. I'm in.
It's Greg Hood. What's good under the hood of
You guys
Mazda?
were fighting.
Of Mazda of Clement. We were not fighting. We were just trying to work out an audio issue.
Oh, brother! When Andy and I fight, it's not what you want to see.
Yeah.
You know, he's this celebrity, gets a little tight in his shorts.
When I first met Sanders, he kicked my butt. I challenged him to a fight. He just picked me up, slammed me against the wall, and said, "You want to continue this?" And I said, "No."
All right, fair
So
enough.
I'm losing a heartbeat. Let's talk about what are we going to talk about first: the charging stations or the Ford and Tesla stock? Which one do you want to go with first?
Well,
Because I know you got a plethora
can-
of information on both.
I think I have like it's not necessarily a third, but I think I've got like a 10th as far as which way we go.
Right.
The thing that fascinates me the most is the charging stations, because if you watch some of this stuff, and I don't like making things political, but they had people out there I saw a video of people like watching people trying to set up to charge cars, and people are looking at this like,
Well, did you see your vice president couldn't?
I didn't want to go into that because I was trying to stay away from the politics, but Vice President Harris looked like she did not know what the hell she was
She
doing.
didn't know. She didn't know what she was doing. But
And she started talking about how it didn't sound, and she heard the glug 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 when she filled up her gasoline engine. It's like, lady, it's electricity. Does your toaster go glug 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 when you plug it in?
We'll get her the little sound device there so it can play, just like you get motor noises. Hey, no, so let's talk about that. She is proposing also, or they are, or they're. I don't want to get political.
How about just the government is proposing this? That way, we're not accusing anyone. It's just
Let's
the
accuse
federal
people. Let's
government.
be a little bit accusatory. That's fine.
Well, the what came out of that though is that is part of this. I'm spending all your future money. Is that
I didn't know where you were going with that.
I didn't know either. I thought I was going to edit.
I'm going to put the emphasis on the future.
Yeah.
I'm spending all your money in that they were going to put in 500,000 charging stations. All right. So let's put that in perspective. ChargePoint is the largest manufacturer and distributor of these charging stations. And they have about 30,000 so far in the United States. And ChargePoint is the brand that I bought also. So if you're counting car dealerships and all that stuff, that's where they're at. So there's 30,000. Tesla's got their share. I don't know what the number is, but it's a couple thousand. And
you would think that would have more than that already. They make it seem like a couple of thousand across the U.S.
Yeah, you would think they do. But, I think they rely more on people using them in their home.
Yeah.
So you've got that. But so I was doing a little show prep, which Andy never does.
Of course not.
And I don't do much of, but because I'd rather kind of talk off the cuff. But there were some really, really interesting things that I thought of in terms of that. So I looked up something, and I'm going to have to put on my readers here because I'm older than dirt. But I think this is really important. It said that it was about the dangers of electric vehicle charging stations. And I started thinking about it. I thought, well, you're going to put in 500,000 of these. You're changing something significantly. What could go wrong? Two things is that level 2 charging stations are 240 volts. So 240 volts, if you get shocked by it, will kill you.
It holds you to it because there's a voltage that knocks you off.
Well, I don't know.
But the 240 will stick you to it and like fry you, doesn't it?
It just stops your heart. But anyway, my heart stopped a long time ago.
Yeah.
But the 110, you when you're a kid used to shove, penny in the receptacle and you lived to tell about it. But the problem is these level 2 charging stations, those are the ones that are 32 amp, and it's the amperage more than the voltage that'll knock you down. But,
that's what I hear.
Which is more common in the nation's infrastructure. Well, with that, guess what's going on? Copper theft out of the charging stations. And the stations remain energized after they steal the stuff. So if somebody comes up and grabs it, there's a problem. The other thing is that they have GFCIs, and those are ground fault circuit interrupt. Like you have one in your kitchen or wherever you have water close to the bathroom, and that's to break it if there's a fault there to cut off the power. Well, they're saying so far some areas of the country report a 57% failure rate on GFCI breakers. So things like lightning will impact it, water impacts it, humid areas, high humidity areas, 10.5% of receptacle GFCIs were not even operable, meaning they're not even doing their job to protect you. And here's the real problem, is there's nobody out there checking it. So the government is getting involved in all this garbage is what they normally do. And, they have to do permits and all this stuff. But the one area they haven't done anything with that probably would be critical, because people are left to their own devices with these things. It's not like you're going into a monitored station and somebody's plugging in your car and they're monitoring equipment. They're out sitting in the middle of a parking lot somewhere. So if somebody comes up and vandalizes the thing, you don't know what you're grabbing. So there's some risk in all of that.
Risk for thieves, though. I mean, we're talking about people who are stealing stuff.
People steal everything. So
maybe,
but not one state requires periodic safety inspections of those electrical charging stations. Right. Now that doesn't mean it won't change, but that means currently that's what you've got going. And the other thing is homeowners are putting them in their house, and it costs you probably $1,000 to have an electrician come out. Depends on where you live. Could it be even more? But so what do people do? What do they always do? They shortcut.
Try to do it themselves.
Yeah, try to do it themselves. So you're going to go and put a 240 volt charging station in your home, and you don't have a clue what you're doing. I mean, there's a lot of risk in that. So her pushing the agenda that they're going to have 500,000 charging stations, that's 500,000.
Right. Can I throw something out there? Because you mentioned this on the show that we had a couple of weeks ago when you were talking about how you were going to have a couple of these charge. I think you said 2.
Right. I have 2. Well, I have 2 stations. One of them has two stations on one pole.
But you'll have the ability to do 3 cars at a time, basically?
Well, 1 in the shop for the technicians, and then 2 out in the parking lot.
And I don't like asking people about money, but I think you did mention you paid a certain amount for it. I couldn't remember what it was. Can you tell us
for the stations?
For the station, how much was it?
The 2 charging one, I paid $7,500 for the equipment, and I paid $1,500 for the one that went in the shop. That did not include installation. So all in, with both of them installed, it was $13,300 or $13,800, I believe.
All right, so I just put the numbers, and I'm showing it to the folks on my camera here. 500,000 times $7,500. I didn't put the other 1,500 into it because I figured the government would give the company the runaround about how they're going to pay for it. It comes up as 3.75 E9.
What does that mean?
I guess that's $3.75 billion.
There's more than billion.
No,
I mean, it's got to be insane. With the E9, I've never seen that with my calculator, but that's how much money that they're putting into this stuff. If we get to that 500,000, if they do it at $7,500 like you did per station, that is a lot of money.
But there's another part to it. That doesn't count real estate.
Wow.
I mean, think about it for a minute. Now, will some of the places do it for free? I suppose, I mean, are all Walmarts willing to give up 10 parking spaces for a charging station? I don't know. Are filling stations willing to give up that real estate? What goes into that equation of that $500,000?
And it's like the whole thing with McDonald's. McDonald's used to be at one point they owned the most land on the planet because of the amount of McDonald's and the actual places where they are. So yeah, I agree with you on that. Finding a place to put it. And then you have the liability portion of it too, with the stuff that you were talking about. If I put one out in front of my business and someone gets shocked on it,
right,
because they walk past it and someone had done something to it, then I guess I'm liable.
Well, if you're not the responsible party that's monitoring every day to make sure that nobody stole the copper out of or damaged or left the wire hanging, or that the GFCI is working properly, I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff there that once again, it's unintended consequences. Nobody thinks it all through to the end when you're talking about the government and how they do that stuff. How did I think about it? I thought about it.
Yeah. Growing pains, I think, but that's what happens, I think, when we go too fast.
Growing pains where people die is a bad example.
It's a bad kind of growing pain.
That doesn't mean it's 100% certain it's going to happen, but they're already thinking it and saying it in this article that I pulled up here, because they know there's a percentage of equipment that does not work. And to use an example of anything else, if you leave equipment sitting long enough anywhere, it's going to degrade, correct?
Yeah.
So where in that money plan is then making sure that they are taken care of and that they are Yes. Who's going to maintain that product? I didn't hear anything on that. Did you?
Well, and I agree with you on that, but let me be the devil's advocate for a second. If you were president, Greg,
Because he's the devil, so you would be the advocate.
He's the
for the
absolute devil,
devil.
but
Just call me Lou
call you Lou.
for sure.
But no, I just want to put this back to you because this is something that I thought about. How would I implement this if I were put in charge and saying, look, we've got to get to a point where we have to have the EVs. I'm not saying that we do, but let's just say for a better planet on the ecological front, how would you implement this better to make it where it actually could work? Because this looks like this is just set up for failure.
I think it's set up for trouble, but there's an agenda behind it. And I'm going to go not political, but I'm going to go common sense. I heard something the other day. Those tornadoes that went through Kentucky and a couple states were tragic.
Right.
And one of the comments that was made, of course, they had to drag climate change into the whole thing. And just as this is climate change is driving this whole agenda. But the real problem I had with it, and it came out of this news reporter's mouth. She said the last time that we had a tornado touch down that was anywhere near this long was in 1925. And the next sentence she says, and she's asking a meteorologist, so now with climate change, what is going on? Are we going to expect more of these? I'm thinking it's now 2021. So it's almost 100 years later before we have one that so it exceeded it slightly. So what happened to the climate back then?
Mm-hmm.
But now, did you know there's less tornadoes than there were? But that stuff isn't obvious. So my point is this, is that all this stuff is agenda driven. Is there anything wrong with electric car? No, I mean, there's wrong with how to get them charged and how to grow it. There's some issues. Would I like to have an electric car? Yeah, I got nothing against it. But I just don't think the stuff was thought out, and they just throw stuff against the wall and hopes it sticks. And in this particular case, if that in fact is slated to happen, where there's 500,000 of them coming instead of just being political hyperbole, then we are going to have some real issues because there's nothing to backfill it to make sure it's taken care of properly.
Okay. When we come into the show, I think that you're a smart guy.
Well,
so
don't get carried away.
Well, no, I come into
no,
it.
it's not super smart guy. It's super handsome guy.
Oh, I messed up. I read the thing wrong. I thought it said smart guy right there, but
Right.
you didn't
That'll
answer
be
my
next
you
show.
didn't answer my question though. How would you implement it? How would you set up your plan if it was I am Lord Greg and we're going to have electric cars, but I want to go about it this route? Would you do test markets and see how you could set that up?
I would let the private sector take care of it.
Bingo.
The market will drive demand. You see, there's a forced demand here. I mean, the technology's better, the cars are better, people have interest in them now, but they still don't have that full wild desire for an EV vehicle. I think part of it's because the way some of them look. When you make a Nissan Leaf and it looks like it came out backwards, I mean, that kind of slowed the whole process down. I don't think you look at hybrid technology, I don't think a Prius was a particularly attractive car. That's just my personal opinion, but
I agree.
The point is that they did that to kind of designate them as being different, so people would know what they are.
They should have just put a sticker on them instead of making the freaking car ugly.
That is a great point.
I wasn't trying to put you on the spot. I just wanted to know what.
But I
what
would
your
let
thoughts were,
the free market do what the free market does, but the problem is that when they're shutting down these goals of shutting down the production of
the combustible engines.
Yeah, petroleum products. Once again, I'll say it again. They're not shutting down oil because everything we're touching and wearing and looking at is made by some kind of petroleum product.
And the things that they make, the chargers and the electric cars are made out of petroleum too.
Here's my
it takes petroleum to make this stuff.
Correct. So here's my other question. If we're so concerned about the environment, and I'm very concerned about the environment, I want to live and have clean water and clean air. And I think a lot of the stuff they did, I lived in Southern California when I went out in Riverside, California to play golf, and I hit a drive down the fairway. I couldn't see where the ball went. And then on top of it, when I was done, I felt like I'd been swimming all day in a pool because felt like chlorine. And this was back in 1990. Mm-hmm. It's a whole lot cleaner air now. And I totally get that. I mean, it is important that happens, but part of that is through the technology of cleaning up the cars and the emissions that are coming out of them with a fossil fuel. But my question is this, the ultimate question, and then we'll move on, is that when If we are so conscious about our environment, then why can't we pull the oil from here to help our economy and help what we do, where we can actually have some kind of impact on how it's done? You telling me that Saudi Arabia or Iran, which is now selling oil, are you telling me that those guys care about our environment? Not a chance.
And plus, their oil, it's been proven it pollutes more than oil we extract from the United States
Okay.
underground. It's the oil is not the quality that we can create.
All right, but let's just put that aside for a second. I mean, think about when they went to war and they started burning up all the oil wells out in Iraq. I mean, they're polluting our world with this stuff. We would have better control over it and help us too. So there's always something that's underlying to this stuff.
Well, and obviously we could talk about this forever, and I think we'll get more into this stuff as we roll along, because the whole EV car thing is just insane to me. Because, and I know that I have the mentality of I've always had a combustible engine and everything else, and but you're gonna have to have, and you got some fine sales folks down there at Mazda of Columbia. You're gonna have to get your best one to come and convince me to buy an electric car and tell me all the great things about it. So I'm
Dude,
at that
I'll
juncture.
convince you.
Just drive one once.
No, they're fun. There's
They
nothing
are
wrong
great.
with the car,
Right,
but there's something wrong with what they cost.
exactly. That's
Right?
kind of the
If
big
something
thing.
has to be subsidized, once again, Elon Musk is the one who said it the best. I mean, let the market drive it.
Right.
And he brought this car in front of everybody and has done a fantastic job. But he doesn't play the politics game, so he's not part of the conversation when it comes to government and EV. He's done it on his own.
Well, speaking of Mr. Musk, and I hate to take over for you here, Andy,
Go
but
right ahead,
to
sir.
pivot right into what we were going to talk about next, Tesla, which is the company that he started, and Ford, their stocks are down. Is that a sign of trouble coming for 2022?
No, everybody's stock is down. And the reason behind the stock price issue is the nervousness of the market due to the fact that the Fed is talking again about raising interest rates,
Mhm.
because that impacts my industry more than about anything on the planet. You start adding, you get, if I can go in a car dealership right now and buy a car at 2% interest or 2.5 or 3 if I've got good credit, and all of a sudden a year from now it's at 5 or 6 if I've got good credit, that makes a substantial amount of difference in your payment, especially now that cars are averaging over $30,000. When you're borrowing 10 grand, it's not a big deal. When you borrow 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or 80 or whatever they are now, man, that 3-4 points in interest makes a significant difference in your
does.
payment. So their nervousness is coming from the talk that's rumbling through the Fed. Now, the Fed wants to raise interest rates because they're trying to slow down this heated inflation economy. But the downside to that is, and they know it, and this is what might keep it more in check, is that they have to pay interest too on all this money they've borrowed. So if they let the interest rates get out of control, that we can't service the debt as a nation. So that creates a whole nother can of worms. So the upside to our industry that I see, and I'm not Mr. Prognosticator here, but they'll probably keep them reasonably low. 0.5 point raise in interest rates ain't going to kill us. And I don't think it'll slow down the economy that much in that particular case. And the stock will rebound for all these and go back up. But everybody was down. So it wasn't just the EV manufacturers.
Well, it reminds me of the movie Top Gun, Andy. Remember at the beginning of Top Gun where
Feel the need for speed.
no, not necessarily
sorry.
the need for speed.
Yep.
When Maverick got in trouble and he goes in front of his captain, and the captain tells him, "You're writing checks your
But your
body,
body
can't cash."
There you go.
Exactly, and that's kind of where we're at.
Well said, Rob
It's been going
Sanders.
on for a long time.
Well quoted.
I think we just crossed 30 trillion.
And with that, we wrap another episode of What's Good Under the Hood. Super handsome guy from Mazda of
me.
Columbia, Greg Hood. What's Good Under the Hood? Rob Sanders and me, Andy Woods. Thanks for watching and listening to What's Good Under the Hood.